Or even better, I'm logging in one by one. I should use Ansible and just log in both at the same time. Right? So boom. Why would I do that? Just run Ansible, loop back, playbook. I already got a playset for that, right? You know, I'm making it make sense, right? So boom, it's doing the show IP in brief. Oh, but that's why it's just gonna give me that. It's not gonna give me. Oh, it's not gonna give me the description part, but show IP in brief. Boom, loop back 10. I didn't have to log into them individually. I just saved myself a few seconds. I saved you a few seconds of being on this video with me. You feel me? What's happening, ninjas? It's your boy, the Network Ninja, back with another video for you. If you clicked on this video because you're stuck on an exam topic for the CCNA exam or the Encore exam even, that exam topic of Ansible, then this is definitely a video for you. You will be able to create your own Ansible project or lab because I'll be dropping stuff like what's Ansible, how to install it, what's a playbook, and how to run a playbook. And make sure that you watch the video in its entirety because I'm going to be sharing two powerful commands that I think anybody that's trying to lab up Ansible, you definitely need to know it. Or if you're just working with Ansible, it's good to know these two powerful commands. Before we get started and everything with the lab and everything, I just want to give like a brief introduction of what Ansible is. It's a configuration management tool that streamlines your automation processes. It's just another automation tool, right? But this automation tool can help you scale more than you could with Python, meaning that you could get a lot more done. It's a lot more efficient, a lot more robust for network automation. It's really built around that, whereas Python is just a programming language, which is a tool that you can use to program stuff, but it's not really built for that. As an example, for Python, if you wanted to do the lab that we're going to do today, basically configure multiple networking devices at the same time, if you wanted to do that, and more specifically, let's say configure a loopback interface like we're going to be doing today on these networking devices. Yes, it could get accomplished in Python. However, you would have to give specific instructions to your machine that's running that Python code or that's doing the interpreting in your IDE or whatever. You would have to put step-by-step instructions like how to connect to the box, then how to, once it's connected to the box, that's just a whole bunch of lines of code. Then you got to give it lines of code to actually say get on the interface, configure the interface with this configuration. Then you got to drop the lines of config that you need it to configure. Then you're going to have to close the session out. And then it's got to kill the connection. And you got to give all of those steps, each step by step of what it takes to SSH to a networking device, configure the device, and then exit out of it, close the session, and kill that SSH connection. You have to supply all of that. Whereas Ansible, it's really just all of that is going to be done and handled for you in the background. All you have to do really is just create a file and express your intent in that file, what you want to do as far as, okay, I want a loopback interface configured. There's a module for that. I want a host name configured. There's a module for that. I want a SSH connect. There's a module for that. It's way simpler because it's way more simplified, as in you just get to just pick and put together pieces of a puzzle really, and then just fill in whatever you need. Like if it's a loopback 10, then you need to supply that information. But as far as how to configure it and all of that kind of stuff, like with Python, dropping all of those lines of code, you don't have to do that because the structure for Ansible is completely different, as it's using YAML files and these inventory files, as we'll see in the progression of this video. Alright, now that we got all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and let's jump over to the lab and install Ansible. Jump over to the lab and we're back. Alright, let me get logged back in. As you can see, pretty straightforward. This is nothing but an Ubuntu machine. And if you want to run the same version of Ubuntu that I'm running, I'm using 23.04, one of the newest versions, I guess. And it's Lunar is the code name if you wanted to use that. Also, you want to check if Ansible is already installed on your machine. You can do that running this command, Ansible -- version. If not, you're going to have to install Ansible. If you're unfamiliar with installing packages and stuff with Linux, I strongly recommend you check out my Try Hack Me video where I go in the Linux strength training room and I go over basic Linux commands and everything, and that'll get you souped up more to handle installing packages and stuff like that. If you are familiar with it, you just do sudo apt install and then Ansible. Of course, since I have it already installed, it's going to come back and say you already got it installed with the newest version, blase squaze. Now, you also want to make sure all the dependencies and everything are up to date and everything, so I would just do a sudo apt update. And again, I'm just telling you, this is my experience. This is what I had to do when I was setting up my lab. You may not have to even run that sudo apt update. The other dependency, or I wouldn't say a dependency, but it's something definitely that's needed if you're going to be doing this lab, especially for connecting to the devices. You want to run pip show paramico. Let me clear the screen. And paramico is just a library, right, that Python uses to establish SSH connections with Cisco devices or networking devices in general. And you want to make sure that you have that installed. If you don't, you're going to have to use pip to install that with pip install paramico. I'm not going to do that one again because, again, it's already installed. It's just going to say that it's installed already. All right, now that we got all of that out of the way as far as installing Ansible, making sure that we got Python 3 running, that's another one that we want to check. All right, let's see. Definitely want to make sure you got Python 3 installed. It should come installed by default, but I got Python 3 running, and that's the version running right there. So you just want to make sure of that as well. Now that you got all of that out of the way, the next thing to do is this SSH setup, I call it. So this VM needs to establish a SSH connection with the routers that I will be pushing the config down to. And SSH has to be established between them before we even begin to think we can run Ansible against these devices. And the reason why is because SSH is the transport protocol that's going to be used to connect to these devices from our machine. I got router 77 and router 88 set up on my network, my internal network here, and just running a ping to it. You can see 77 and 88. These are the two devices that I'll be connecting to. So before you move forward to the next part of this lab, you will have to establish an SSH connection to your boxes, right? So this one, username and password, it's a lab. I got it Cisco, right? And as you can see, I'm in that first device. And as you can see, we only got two interfaces there. In our lab, we're going to be having Ansible create a loopback 10 interface on this device. And we'll get out of here. As well as on this device, we run show interface description here. See, nothing there as well. And we can exit out of both of those. And again, Ansible is going to do that, and it's going to do it both at the same time, simultaneously. Where Python, you would have to do this one by one in each code. It would be like connect to this one, run the code, connect to this other one, run the code, and everything like that. But Ansible, you don't have to do it. And I'm sure you can do it in Python by using multi-threading and everything. But again, that just speaks more to my point that it's even more complex code, more lines of code that you're going to have to learn and research about just to accomplish the same task that Ansible is handling for you. Okay, after you verify ping and SSH outside of Ansible, the next thing that you want to do is to start creating your host file to start this whole process of automating pushing down this config down to both of these devices. And an inventory file is just nothing but a host file that Ansible uses to reference because it's an agentless orchestration tool or a config management tool. I want to pause right there really quick and just give you a brief explanation between agentless and agent tools, as that really threw me off when I was studying. So if you're studying Cisco, if you're studying CCNA and especially Encore, because that's where I was learning all about Ansible and everything was in the Encore. And they talked about Puppet, they talk about Chef, and they talk about agent tools versus agentless tools. All you need to know, especially for the Encore exam, is that Ansible is an agentless tool. And what does that mean? Well, let me explain what an agent-based tool would be. So one would be like Puppet, but the way I understand it is Puppet allows you to install an agent onto a guest shell that's on a Cisco device. So Cisco has some kind of software that creates a guest shell, and then you can apply this agent, this Puppet agent to it. What that does is allow that device to communicate with a Puppet master. What is a Puppet master? It's just that central location point that's going to be pushing that config down to that device. And all the Puppet agent is saying, hey, this device has a Puppet agent. We can communicate. We can rock and shock together, right? Well, an agentless tool like Ansible doesn't have that same kind of structure. What Ansible does is you define a .ini file, which lists all the hosts that you want to connect to. And on top of that, it gives the connection parameters, like how are you going to connect, username or password, what kind of iOS is it using, all of those different kind of connection parameters. It's all in this ini file that Ansible references just to establish the SSH connection. And then after that, after you establish the SSH connection, you can pretty much run the playbooks and the plays and everything and complete the whole automation process. So that's where we're going to start right now, is we're going to define our hosts that we want to connect to and those connection parameters in the .ini file as we're going to create that file. Oh, let me open the file so you can see the structure of how you're going to have to set yours up. So you can pause it, take a screenshot or whatever. But the first part, when you're creating your .ini file, you got to put 2 brackets in there, and within the bracket it has to be a word of routers. It could be switches or whatever. You're just defining these are the hosts pretty much that I'm going to connect to. You can even use hosts there, but I would just use routers if it's routers, or switches for switches, whatever. Then I got the host name, and then this Ansible _host equals 192.168, blah, 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 the IP address of each of the hosts. That's 7788. Then this router's vars, you're going to need that. These are going to be all the connection parameters I was talking about. What iOS is it using? Ansible needs that. It needs the username. It needs the password. And this Ansible become password, this is if you're connected to the device that has an enabled password set up on it. And that's all become means, is just enable password. That's how Ansible defines privilege. So now we have all of those parameters and all of that information plugged in our ini file. Pretty much all I have to do, and this could be a list of hosts, right? This could be 10 or 20. I only have 2. That's all. I just had to plug in that information, which is very simple to do. Just plugging that in, probably take 5-10 minutes just to build a file. Now that we have a host file set up and we got all of our SSH connection and stuff established outside of Ansible, I believe the best next step before creating playbooks and running playbooks and finding out that they're failing and having to troubleshoot all that, the best next step is to verify SSH connectivity between Ansible and this VM machine. And how can we do that? Well, Ansible has something called Ansible docs. If you go -L, you can list all the information in this. And then if you grab, let's say, cisco.ios.ios. I just filtered out for Cisco iOS ones because that's the ones that we're concerned with today. They have ones for Juniper. They got modules for Juniper. But like I said, these modules are, if you want to create ACL interfaces, creating ACLs with Ansible, creating Messenger of the Day banner with Ansible. But anything, you could pull up anything, iOS fax, and let's just look at this. module, right? If you want to see what's inside of a module, you would just go Ansible -doc and then list that module, and then it gives you all this information, kind of like a man page, right? And if you scroll down, every module has an example section, which is just like the template. So you could just really just copy this in and just replace everything that needs to get replaced. Now I'll provide you these two powerful commands, and these commands test SSH connectivity between your device running Ansible and the networking devices that you're trying to configure. So the first command that you want to run to check out your connectivity is Ansible-I, and that's telling Ansible that switches to specify what inventory file you want to use. And we only have one inventory file that we created, is agents.ini. Now here you can either put R77 for one of the hosts. I could run this command against one of the hosts, but if I wanted to run it against everything listed, I would put that name of the heading of those hosts that I had in that file. I would put whatever name that I named that right there. And then -M switches for what module out of that Ansible docs module that I want to run against. And then it was iOS_facts is the one that I want to. And it's going to run it. So basically it's going to that file right now, Ansible is. And it's pulling information from both of those hosts listed, connecting to them, most importantly, and then giving me the information back. Host R88, successful. And it gives us information like host name. It gives you the serial number. It gives you iOS. It gives you the version of the iOS it's running. Very powerful. And we were hitting both of them. R77, same information. Host name R77, serial number, version iOS. The next one you want to do is the same thing, but a different module. Same command. Let's clear this out, and it's ping. That's pretty self-explanatory. If you're studying at this level, you definitely know ping is just to test connectivity, but a successful ping is going to give ping pong results. The next thing that we're going to do is create our playbook, and then we're going to run our playbook. So I already have some example playbooks right here created. We'll look at this one. So if you wanted to create your own playbook, you would use any kind of text editor. I use Vim, you can use Nano, whatever you are comfortable with. And then you're going to want to open a YAML file by signifying .yml file extension, right? And that pulls up that. And I've already filled this information out, but what you're going to want to do is put 3 dashes. That starts the format of a YAML file. And then right here is -host to specify in that INI file what host to hit, which was routers. Become. Remember, become is to get into a privileged exec mode, right? So you set that to yes, and since it has the username and password, it could drop down. So this entire thing is the playbook, and then you have tasks. In this playbook, I got to play, and that's what name is. Name is saying, hey, he's got to play name, show IP interface brief, and then it just specifies it's an iOS command. What command? Show IP and brief. And then the other play is to print the output, right? So that's the playbook. Now, how do we run the playbook? The command is Ansible -playbook, then -I to specify that inventory file again. Let me clear that out of the way. And then you just specify what playbook you want to run. And that was the name of the playbook I want to run. So let's run it. As you can see, it's calling out the play, show IP and brief. That's the play to run. Print the output. That's the next play to run. And then it gives you like a play recap. Everything went okay on 2 of those devices, on each of these devices. Nothing changed, nothing unreachable, nothing failed. And then it gives us that same information that we've seen by me logging into each device individually. That should show you how powerful it is. Before, I had to log into each device individually, log out, and then log back into the other one. This one, Ansible said, I'm going to log into both of them things, and I'm going to give you the information from both of them things at the same time. The next thing we're going to do is configure something. So that's this other file that I have, that I created. lab.yml. Again, 3 dashes, that's all I did. Dash host, what is it? Routers. Very simple stuff. What do you want to name? And then tasks. What are the plays in this playbook? You should just think of that like plays, really. Okay, you always got to name the play. You got to name the play for Ansible. Then, what module am I going to use? What is that module going to do? What action is it going to perform? Configure what? A name. This is the interface I want to create. Loopback 10. Description. We all know what that is. And then enabled. True. What does that mean? Just think of enabled as that's just saying no shut on that interface. Even though it's a loopback interface and we know that it's going to go up and up automatically. If this was an Ethernet interface or a gigabit or any other kind of serial interface, sorry, you would have to put enabled true, because if you don't, it's going to just be shut down administratively, right? So now all you have to do is run that same thing, just change up the playbook. Very simple. Ansible-playbook, what inventory file you want to run it against, and then give it the playbook to run it against, and it's going to do its thing. Even better, I'm logging in one by one. I should use Ansible and just log in both at the same time, right? So boom. Why would I do that? Just run Ansible, loopback, playbook. I already got a play set for that, right? You know, I'm making it make sense, right? So boom, it's doing the show IP in brief. Oh, but that's why it's just going to give me that. It's not going to give me, it's not going to give me the description part, but show IP in brief. Boom, loopback 10. I didn't have to log into them individually. I just saved myself a few seconds. I saved you a few seconds of being on this video with me. You feel me? My ninjas, I hope you guys found some value in this video. As always, please share it as a resource for anybody. Please use it as a resource if you're studying. Please like the video. Definitely subscribe if you're not a subscriber, because I'm going to keep dropping these videos for you. Appreciate y'all. Holla at me, and definitely click on that next video. Mahalo. Peace.